social service
Did you
meeting
sign,
to order.
Frank? Did you sign it?
First order of business is approval of the previous minutes.
Go ahead, I'm done, go ahead.
Has everybody had a chance to review them?
Yes.
Any questions, comments, alterations? Entertain a motion.
Motion.
Second. Current business.
Got a vote. Take the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Excuse me, I'm under the weather. Current business. Authorizing agreements regarding transportation for children with special needs to education and therapy programs. Commissioner?
Yes, good evening, everyone. The department requests legislative action to renew our contract with Raja for the provision of transportations for our children with special needs. As you're aware, this is a mandated program for those youth that have been identified as being needed for preschool-related services, that the county does have an obligation to provide transportation for those parents who are not otherwise able to provide that transportation themselves. When this RFP was issued in 2018, Raja was the only proposer that responded to it. I will note that as we've continued to work with Raja, we've actually seen a slight decrease in costs as they have been able to look at ways to be able to more efficiently provide the transportation across the 6 zones for which they do.
Any questions, comments, observations? Doug?
Is Roger a union, you know?
I don't have that answer, but I could certainly find that out and get
Just
back
for
to
my
you.
own personal, I guess. Thank you.
Anyone ready? I think entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Vogt, second by Mr. Lockhart. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Passes. Authorizing agreements regarding the acceptance of grant funding and the provision of services regarding the Family First Prevention Services Act.
Yes, so the Family First legislation, which is a federal legislation, is really focused on looking at the use of congregate care for youth, and in particular, how long youth in congregate care linger. And so with this federal legislation, there are now tighter criteria in regards to youth who are in congregate care and how long they can be placed in congregate care based upon an assessment that occurs and validation through the family court judges. This legislation does take effect as of October 1st of this year. However, New York State requested and was approved for a waiver, so this does not take effect in New York State until October 1st of 2021. That being said, New York State recognizes that there needs to be a preparation for this because it could have significant fiscal impact in regards to no longer being able to receive reimbursement for youth who are in congregate care level of care. So in preparation for that, the Office of Children and Family Services has issued what they're calling technical assistance transition funding to local districts to be able to utilize how they deem to be the most effective way for that local district to be able to do so in order to be better prepared for the Family First legislation. And so Albany County is looking at focusing on our recruitment and increasing the use of kinship care. We're looking at receiving technical assistance from an external provider, as well as looking at recruitment of foster care parents. And so that's how we've identified at this point in time how we would utilize this funding should we receive approval to be able to accept it.
What's the increase in the time period for coverage?
I'm not sure.
Okay, and
No, I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're asking me.
the new legislation has increased the coverage period for people in this program?
No, actually, it's decreasing the amount of reimbursement that we would have available to us. So Right now, you have youth that go into congregate care, and they could be placed for as a minimum of 6 months, and some youth we have in congregate care that might be in there 3 years. And so with this legislation, what it's saying is after 2 weeks of a youth being in congregate care, you're guaranteed reimbursement for those first 2 weeks. But after that, there needs to be an assessment in regards to whether or not that is the appropriate placement for that youth. And if it's determined that that is not the appropriate level of care for that youth, then any remaining days in placement for that youth is all local costs. So in essence, because of that, we recognize that there is a need for us to look at our numbers in congregate care, what is the length of stay for our youth in congregate care, and then what are the ways that we can look to have interventions and other resources other than the use of congregate care. We recognize that there are some youth that are still going to meet the criteria for congregate care, but we recognize that there are also youth that are in congregate care that maybe there are other options available to them.
Is this new legislation based on a federal mandate?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Lockhart?
The whole purpose of the Family First Act, though, is to get kids out of congregate care.
To get them
And
out
put
of
them into
congregate.
more family, foster care, or
To
family
get them into family,
kinship.
family care, kinship, that is a big push of this, and also use of prevention programs.
Which is a good thing.
Yes, it is, but not without its challenges.
Good luck. We have trouble getting foster families.
And foster families, especially for our older youth, you know, when we have an older youth that's coming into care, we will explore foster boarding level of, you know, in terms of being able to place them with a foster family, but, you know, it's tough when you have an older youth because there's a stigma in regards to older youth. They're viewed as having more challenging behaviors, complex behaviors, so it's really very challenging to find a foster family that is willing to take in a youth. So by default, oftentimes, they do end up in a congregate level of care, so, yeah.
Thank you.
And what's the age range of this program?
It's for anyone that could go into congregate care level of care, so we're talking from anywhere from the age of 12 on up to 18.
Okay. No further.
Just typical for clarification for everybody, typically these kids are kids that have been removed from the home for abuse, behavioral problems, or things like that, right?
They're
Anybody
both,
that could be.
actually, so there are ones that are going through the Article 10 door,
Right.
which is abuse and neglect, but this also includes our youth that are going through Article 3 or Article 7. So Article 3 being the JDs and Article 7 being the PINs.
Right,
Yeah.
just to clarify the population.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, on readiness, I'll entertain a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Bullock moved it and Ms. Lockhart seconded. Any opposition? Motion passes. Last, authorizing agreement with Trinity Alliance of the Capital Region Inc. regarding the provision of family and neighborhood resources centered services.
Thank you. So this is a program that we have funded since 2005. It falls under the COPS funding, which is the Community Optional Prevention Services funding, and the provider of that service is Trinity Alliance. And essentially what it is along the continuum of services, we have prevention services, and then in addition to this, this is another funding stream that has been allotted through the Office of Children and Family Services to again have a comprehensive level of programs and services with the goal of really being able to provide resources and supports to families so that they are not interfacing with the child welfare system, in particular with foster care. So this would be aligned with the prevention services. It's just a different funding stream. And so with Trinity, they offer a comprehensive array of services that includes, you know, tax preparation, you know, clothing, food. They have a pretty comprehensive program that they do to support families. And again, the goal is how to be able to mitigate them, having to interface with the child welfare system, in particular with having children come into care.
Any questions, comments, observations? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Motion. Moved by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Melissa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, I think, motion to adjourn is in order.